Welcome once again to the All 32 Pod. Mike Giardi alongside Will Parkinson. As always, week 13 almost in the books. We're taping this on Monday afternoon. One more game to go. 12 one-score games, which matches an NFL league high this past weekend.
Yeah, it was a fun weekend of football. I felt like some really good games, some not so good games. We saw a lot of different things all over the board. I think things are kind of rounding into form now. We're starting to see some of the bad teams mostly pack it in. This is kind of that time of year post-holidays where teams start to get eliminated. We see some folks pack it in. We saw it on Thanksgiving, quite obviously. And then, we also see, some teams still fighting towards the end. And then obviously, some of the really big matchups. We saw the True Fork and the 49ers, and we saw a couple of different other things. But yeah, it was a fun weekend of football overall.
Yeah, no question about it. We'll get to a lot of it today. Reminder show brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network, and Game Time. Best tickets, best prices to get you see any event. We'll start with the game that I did yesterday on Sunday. Patriots lose to the Colts 25-24. Comes down to the fourth quarter. Well, it comes down to a lot of things. Patriots being 2 for 6 in the red zone. Part of the problem there, a big part of the problem, but they had a chance. The Colts go on a 19-play, 86-yard drive. They go 3 for 3 on fourth down conversions. Although, Will, if you listen to the coach, Maye, Patriots coach after the game, but if you take away that drive, we're all pretty happy. Excuse me? If you take away that drive, there's been a lot of, from Mayo over the past 3 months of, well, if you take away Cooper Kupp's one big play, he didn't really do much. Or if you take away the 2 50-yard runs that the Texans have, they didn't do all that much. We'd be happy with it. Well, no, you lost the game. You should have won. You had an opportunity to win. You had over 400-plus yards of total offense, Will, and they still can't seal the deal at home. And when you look at their schedule post-bye as they finally hit the bye week, Arizona, Buffalo a couple times, Chargers, it's not a win on the table that you could feel comfortable with and say, yeah, I like our chances in that one. This was the one, and you don't get it.
Yeah, a couple of different things come to mind from this game. I think we've said it a million times. I'll continue to say it. You'll continue to say it. Patriots have a quarterback.
Yes.
I'm not so sure he's not right now the best quarterback in this class. It changes week over week. Look, Caleb's been awesome since the Commanders game. He's been starting to really, he takes some bad sacks, but he's starting to really put up some big time numbers. Obviously, the time and possession stuff at the end there. Although, the coach that got fired, Matt Eberflus, should have saved his rookie quarterback. Jaden Daniels has been a pretty good all year. Had a much better afternoon yesterday. Looked a little healthier, but there was a pretty bleak stretch here from when they were 7-2 to when they're now 8-5. I mean, that was a 4-game stretch that was like, ooh, like that's a little rookie wallish. I feel truly like Drake Maye overall has probably been the most impressive, only from a couple aspects. One, least amount of talent, obviously, around him. Those other guys have, not that, Washington's stacked, but Cliff Kingsbury is obviously a well-regarded OC, and McLaurin and, Eckler and Robinson. These are Ertz. These are solid pieces. Obviously, Caleb's got some really awesome pieces in Chicago, although he doesn't have the coaching. I just feel like from a Maye perspective, like accuracy has been much better than I think it's gotten better quicker than I expected potentially. Mm-hmm. The running ability has been not just a plus, but a plus to his game. If you're looking at prospects, a lot of times you'll kind of be like average, good, and he's been like really good. Like he might be one of the best scramblers in the league right now. And to me, like losing this game, it's like, okay, cool. Better for the pick, and Drake Maye is good. Like there's that mindset right up for sure. But outside of Drake Maye and I guess Gonzalez, maybe Barmore and a couple other pieces, do you feel good about like 47 of the 53 guys on this roster? And then even more importantly, and I'm not trying to beat up on Gerard Mayo here. Like I know that it's year one. I know it's a staff put together kind of by some retread stuff that was already there, some guys that kind of came into a job that didn't look as appealing as it probably does now, especially from an OC perspective. But it's the comments after the game that I'm still confused why we're having the same conversation in December that we were having in April. in April, we were like, dude, like probably shouldn't be tipping picks when like there's teams that want to trade up all, then it was like, I shouldn't call your guys soft. And then it was like, really, really shouldn't have said that I have no control over what goes on. It's just, I guess I'll finish here at the Patriots from personal point of view. And of course, Anthony Richardson post Jets game has turned back into a guy that can't complete 50% of passes and the whole 9 yards. But the Colts are kind of going to be a 8-9 middling team, kind of a little bit. I thought they'd take a bigger leap and be a playoff team. You kind of thought, I think, where they are now, where they're a good competitive team. They're well coached at times, but too much variance. Mayo might figure it out. But I truly believe if this job was back on the market in 2 months' time, the Patriots with a top 5 pick, like a gazillion dollars in cap space, and a really, really highly regarded young cornerstone on both sides of the football, it kind of becomes a job that I think would be near the top of the list, as opposed to right now. They're not going to fire Mayo. I would be shocked. I'm just saying, it's like, dude, just could you stop putting your foot in your mouth during games after the game? It's just, you got to stop. And then yesterday it was like, I was worked up. Like, dude, you have 15 minutes. There's a rule, so you don't do that stuff.
Right. Yeah. Just again, it's the continued missteps. And he tried to, about a month ago, sort of after the soft comments, to adopt more of the Belichick philosophy in terms of like, I'm going to come out here, I'm going to filibuster for 3 minutes about the opposing team. And then that shortens the amount of time that I have to answer questions, that whole sort of thing. But he is honest. And obviously when you're covering that, you appreciate him being a little bit more forthright than Bill ever was. However, there's a fine line to walk, and he hasn't figured out how to walk it just yet, and has gotten himself in trouble because of it. From a football perspective,
is there any chance Mikey loses his job?
No, I can't see it. I think I've been telling people a lot about this a lot lately because the question has come up a lot. Robert Kraft fell in love with Gerard Mayo, and I don't think one season, especially when he's going to point to, hey, they've already had 7 one-score games, which again, that's the league. So I don't know why but people do that all the time. Fans will do it. Well, we were in all these games. We were in one-score games. Okay, but you're not winning the one-score games. And look, there's talent. There's all these things, but I can't see Robert, unless something disastrous happened here over the final month, saying, nope, you know what? We're moving on. But to your point, again, if you play the what-if game, because Drake Maye is establishing himself as a potential foundational piece, Ben Johnson would be interested in this job. Mike Vrabel Vrabel might have been to begin with. But I'm just saying, when you start talking about the top candidates out there, all of a sudden this job would be, because of what Maye has shown, a much more coveted position than it would have even been a year ago. And look, that's the other thing too. You're stepping into the shoes of Bill, right? So it's, even though the last 4 or 5 years of Bill were not good years by and large, especially the last couple, there's that resume. So there's people that still say to them, oh, well, you should never have gotten rid of Belichick because look what he did for us. Well, he did that a long time ago, and that stopped in 2019, basically, and it was time. But anyway, no, I can't see it. I did want to make one point about the football team before we move on. In years past, there's been a lot of discussion about this defense and where it rates, and like, oh, it's going to be a top 5 defense. It's a top 10 defense. And statistically, at times, the DVOA, last year, they were 9th best in the league, DVOA-wise. And people are like, oh, look at that. Now you've got this. And obviously, you had the Barmore thing. You have Bentley lost for the year. You trade Judon, etc. Peppers suspended, or commissioner's list for essentially 8 games. They've allowed 21 or less only 4 times in 13 games this year. And for a team that has a first-year coach who's hangs his hat on being a defensive guy and who picked the defensive coordinator, really, again, his one real hire was the defensive coordinator of this football team, elevating DeMarcus Covington. I think that's just kind of goes to show you sort of where this has gone this year, because I don't want to hear about the injuries anymore. You have to figure out. They haven't been able to figure out, and we're here in December 2nd, and you haven't figured out your defense just yet. So that's where the Patriots are. They are 3-10. And like I said, the bye week, which I am thrilled for, as I'm sure they are as well. Let's get on to me, what it turns out, I think from a result standpoint, maybe the biggest jumping off point that I've had here with this Philadelphia Eagles team. They beat the Ravens 24-19. Will, I think they've been trending for the last 6-7 weeks as a real threat to Detroit. I think you and I both believe is the best team in the league. But what I'm starting to feel now and watching them and watching what they did to the Ravens, and the Ravens had their moments yesterday offensively, but to hold them to 19 points, and one of them was the late score. I think this might be the best defense in the league. And I think what Vic Fangio has done here over the last 6 or 7 weeks, and obviously the infusion of now Cooper DeJean is healthy and he's playing great, and Quinyon Marshall's been great since day one for them. So that draft class, at least in year one, has been an absolute home run. Zach Bond has played phenomenal for them, and that was like a mid-level signing. Jalen Carter, their defensive tackle, who was the best player in the draft last year, but obviously because of off-field stuff goes, what do you go, ninth, I believe? He didn't come off the field yesterday. That's a 300-pound man in the middle, pass rushing, chasing Lamar Jackson, dealing with Derrick Henry, did not come off the field. The way they're playing, Will, to me is like, damn, man, like, I don't know about the offense, but I know defensively, you guys are legit.
Yeah, a couple of different things. I'll just quickly touch on the Ravens. The Ravens are a good team. They are not a great team. Lamar is an incredible player. If he is in a very Russell Westbrook-ish MVP type of season where his team is going to be a playoff team, but probably not if like in any other year, he probably wins it. Having been that he's won it twice, and we know how these awards are very narrative driven, it's much more likely to be a Josh Allen Saquon award, although Burrow and Lamar very much have arguments to be right in there.
Sure.
I don't trust the Ravens defensively enough right now, and I think even more annoying is the Justin Tucker thing, which we brought up in like week 2, and it was like, hey man, like that was a little weird. And kickers are like relievers and the whole thing, and that whole analogy works. But I mean, he cost them the game yesterday. Like let's be, and I know he's been great for them, but I'm very curious how loyal they'll be to him at some point, because at this rate, he's going to lose them a playoff game. And I don't know. You only have so many years of Lamar in their prime and all these different things, and you wonder, like, are you going to be kicking yourself in a year where Buffalo's really good, but they're not like a superpower. They're really good when they get up on you, but they beat Buffalo, right? And
good.
Kansas City's a team that you should have beaten, and you feel like you can beat. And I'm not trying to beat up on Tucker. He's going to probably be a Hall of Fame kicker, which is saying a lot. But missing an extra point, 3 field goals in a game that it's in a must win, but you kind of had to have. Tough.
Yeah. They got to bring. Yeah. They insist or not. He still got the job.
Somebody in.
I'd bring 5 guys in this week and just all right, Justin, man.
Something.
Yeah, you got to get it right, or you got to get out.
And we've seen. Look, I know I'm biased with the Jets stuff, but we saw the Jets do this, and they were loyal to Greg Zuerlein, who was awesome for them for the last 3 years, and he cost them 3 games. Like,
right.
And their season went down the tubes as soon as that happened. The coach ends up getting fired, the GM gets fired, and maybe things would have been the same for the Jets, but. I don't know. Maybe if they win 2 or 3 of those games that they were supposed to win at 4-2, they're not firing their coach, right? Like maybe it's till week 15 or 14. It's just a different season. So it would be a shame. From the Eagles' point of view, I think them and Detroit is going to be a clash of, if they see each other in the playoffs, is going to be a clash of skulls, heads, whatever the phrase you want to use. It feels like it has a chance to be. Not from an actual rivalry perspective, but very Seattle San Fran from 2000, I believe, 10 or 11, 12, and 13, those couple of years in a row where it was like insane defenses, insane offenses, coaching staffs, these guys just kind of mashing skulls for 3.5 hours and getting a little feisty. The Lions, we know, like to kind of push that edge a little bit. The Eagles, I want to give Fangio credit, but I also don't want to give him too much just because I feel like he's done a good job of getting guys in the right situations, but also like there's a million top 40 picks on this and big name guys on this roster, especially defensively. And they'll get a guy like Bryce Huff back, obviously Graham out for the year now, but like finally Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter playing the way they're supposed to be playing. Finally, Nolan Smith looking like an NFL player a little bit. Josh Sweat's been productive. You mentioned the linebackers. That's probably where he's done his best work. But, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean are, two top 40 picks who people loved in this class. So it's like great to see them playing well. I also think they know that similar to 2 years ago, they can go into a football game and say, we could we can risk it a little bit. We can be a little bit more aggressive. We can go for an interception, a punch out, knowing Saquon's going to run for 150 plus on everybody. And this offensive line is going to do a good job. And Hurts, if he doesn't turn the football over, is a good player. I'm very curious to see if these two teams do match up in the playoffs. I think you trust the Lions staff a lot more just from what they've proven. Both quarterbacks kind of give you a little bit of a pause. Like when their things are right, when things are really right for Goff and really right for Hurts, they have an argument to be the best quarterback in the conference. When things are not right for them, I still have some questions. But the security blankets they have in Gibbs, Montgomery, and Saquon, it's special. So, I'm impressed with the Eagles. I think, again, there was a little bit of luck there in terms of the field goal stuff. And I know the touchdown at the end was irrelevant, so I don't put too much stock in it. That was a big win for them to be like, hey, really good team on the road, the hour and a half drive from Philly to Baltimore. And they went in there and took care of business. And the Saquon MVP stuff, he probably won't win just with the way Josh Allen's kind of putting up, like he's getting the national television bump as a QB. But I mean, he's got every right shout to be right up there with alongside Josh.
Yeah, it's interesting because the Hurts conversation continues for me, and I don't love their drop back game, and I think that's if they get unseated. If they lose whatever at some point here between now and the NFC Championship game, to me, that's going to be.
It'll be if some team can get him out of tunnel screens, go balls to A.J. Brown, and third and short. Yep. The Jets did it last year when they played Philly. And I use the Jets example just because it was something we watched, right? Where the Jets had these backup corners in. The whole thing was the run defense. And the Jets were able to keep the Eagles, get pressure with 4, at times even with 5. And they made Hurts kind of have to really read stuff and make these different decisions. And not that he can't do it, but that's where he puts the ball in harm's way at times. And he had the turnover bug earlier in the year. He had it at the end of last year. Hurts is a good player. I just think that if I'm playing the Eagles right now, I'm saying, you got to beat me, throwing for 304 touchdowns. I'm just not going to let Saquon. I'm going to not let Saquon or AJ Brown beat me. And right now, they're beating everybody.
No, there's no question, but I would totally put it on Hurts, and I think if they get derailed, it's because he's not going to be able to come up in a big spot or something.
Listen, Philly has a chance to still get that 1 seed. So
they do.
It's a much different game. Jared Goff outside in 20-degree weather in Philly, and as opposed to in the Dome in Detroit with that building being the absolute zoo.
Yeah, Sirianni should be hammering that into those guys' heads about this next month and what
Foot on the gas.
Yes, what they're capable of doing. Let's hear from Prize Picks, which is the best place to get real money sports action. Over 10 million members, billions of dollars in award winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players and up to 6 for your shot to win up to 100 times your cash. And it's one of those things you go into and say, hey, like, do I think Jalen Hurts is going to go off this week? Now, let me look at the numbers. Do I go more? Do I go less? Saquon Barkley, pretty much, it seems like whatever the more or less is in rushing yards, feels like recently you just want to take more because he's capable of doing that. Got a great deal for you here at CLNS. You just download the app, which is important. Use the code CLNS. You get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, you don't even have to win with the $5. You're still getting $50, so just download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 off. Prize Picks, baby. Run your game. Let's bounce through a couple other ones because there were so many good games just after. We'll do some quick hitters here. The Texans beat the Jaguars 23-20. Not really what anyone's talking about. Azeez Al-Shaair goes in with his forearm that is braced up, his elbow, and delivers a shot to Trevor Lawrence's head as Lawrence is sliding and giving himself up. I guess I asked you, and he got thrown out of the game after there was an absolute melee after the play happened. And then he took his helmet off. There was all kinds of stuff going on. Dirty play, or does the slide almost invite these sorts of things? Because once you start to commit, the guy's got the ball, and you're supposed to shut it off, but I think it's hard to shut it off.
Yeah, I think. Again, I always say a couple of things, but it's true in this case. It is a couple of things. One, this is all Patrick Mahomes' fault because he fake slides all the time and he pretends to get himself out of bounds all the time and gets an extra 30 yards because guys are scared to get flags. So if you want to blame anybody, let's blame Patrick Mahomes on this.
Chris Collinsworth will not be happy with you right now.
No, he wouldn't, but it's the truth, right? Like we watched in the San Francisco game earlier in the year where he get an extra 35 yards. It happened against the Panthers too, where guys don't want to get a 15-yard penalty, so they let they don't go in there. Alshirer's got a history of this. It's happened 3 times this year already where I don't know how he never got thrown out of the Bears game. I still was
punching
puzzled.
Roschon Johnson. Yeah,
it's like the late hit out of bounds and then just gets up and clocks Roschon Johnson in the head throwing a full punch and somehow replay assist, which is a sham. It happened in the USC Notre Dame game. And I am a USC fan and I was pissed that they lost. I mean, they're full-fledged punch to the helmet and like replay assist is nowhere to be found. But, they cannot wait for a harmless 5-yard speed out to be called out of bounds and then have to correct the call. Like, can't wait for it. Thanks, league office. But clown show. But more importantly, to me, this was as dirty as it gets. This was even more frustrating was Alshirer's reaction. Getting up and going, whoa, I did nothing. Yes, you did. You knew what you were doing. Did he try to put Trevor Lawrence in the fencing pose in a hospital? No, I don't think that was maybe the case. So we have no idea his motive or his not motive. He plays the game on the edge. It's why he's a good football player. He's very physical. There's no doubt about it. And I don't think he's some bad guy. But, you can go look it up. There's the clip of him when he was in San Francisco trying to choke Brady out mid drop back. And that was like, that was a little weird. Like that was and everyone's like, oh, toughen up. Like, dude, I'm the first person to tell you that like the defenseless receiver BS. I mean, you both played receiver and tight end at the college level. Like, I think that rule's somewhat stupid and like we overprotect these quarterbacks and all that stuff is all true. But like, there's a reason that they don't want you when a guy slides to do that because you have no control over your body and you end up concussed. And it's not a concussion where you have a little bit of a little starry, maybe a mild concussion. My body is you're out cold, and good for the Jags players for defending their guy. I would have just asked Texans fans because I've seen a lot of the reaction. Oh, it wasn't that bad of a hit. Blah blah. Suspension's crazy. If that happened to CJ Stroud, I'm just try to look at it objectively. I know it's hard as a fan. I'm not saying Alshirer's a bad guy. He should never play football again. All that stuff. He's like Vontaze perfect. But it's a dirty hit. He's going to get suspended. He should get suspended. He's a repeat offender.
Yep.
And on top of that, the fact that Lawrence was not okay makes it obviously the optics worse. So in all, Mike, I felt like I understand the whole sliding late and not sliding, and that's all a very valid. Rex Ryan, I saw Kirk Benharder, however you pronounce his name, kind of mentioning like the sliding late is a problem. And you're right. It is a problem that needs to be addressed. Kenny Pickett had the famous fake slide in college. That's probably what needs to be policed more than complaining and getting mad at a guy for doing exactly what he was supposed to do. He slid. I don't think he slid late. Nope. And Alshire went forearm and helmet right to the head. That was going to hit him underneath the jaw, underneath the chin, even if he slid earlier. Like he knew what he was doing. So I don't know how you felt, but I felt like the reaction from him almost made it worse by like him cashing out and screaming and throwing his helmet off for 10 minutes. Like you were the one who did it.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
To me, it was dirty as hell. I know he's apologized, and Trevor has said, I'm feeling better and what have you. Probably, I can't imagine he'll play, and that's Trevor's second concussion in the last calendar year. Week
You've
15.
had a lot of injuries all of a sudden out of nowhere.
Week 15 last year, concussed, missed a game. Now you've got this. I can't believe I'm going to say this. I agree with Michael Strahan. I know. I did not have that on my bingo card for the day. Strahan, when they went to whatever it was, halftime or whatever, and he said Shire got himself thrown out of the game. And he said he did it on purpose. And because he said if he stayed in the game, he was going to be an unprotected player. Guys were going to be taking shots at him. They were going to be goading him into stuff. And he obviously, as you just mentioned, the litany of things that he's done in his career, doesn't really have the willpower to stay away from that. And I think like, oh, okay, fine. Let's do it. Let me get thrown out of the, let's escalate this to the point where you have no choice as an official but to throw me out of the game. They were getting pelted as they were coming off the field. Will Anderson, his teammate who was helping him get off the field after he was ejected, got hit in the head with a bottle.
What happened over Thanksgiving for everybody? Because Friday, Saturday, Sunday, between college football and the NFL, it was like everyone just wanted to fight.
Yep.
People went home, talked politics, and came back to games.
Yeah,
and
everybody
miserable.
Everybody was completely pissed off. But yeah, I think you wouldn't be surprised. At least a 1-game suspension. And we just hope that You think more?
I think it's going to be a lot more, and they're going to plead it down. They're going to do the whole. I think he's going to appeal it. My gut feeling is he gets 2 or 3 games, and I think it's going to be the league's going to say, well, it's going to go down to 1, and he's going to get fined a lot. And it's unfortunate because I think didn't Eddie Jackson? Tell me if I'm wrong, Mike. I thought Eddie Jackson got like 4.
Oh, you are right. Actually, yeah, I think you're right.
And I'm thinking to myself, he has not been suspended yet in terms of like in his career. I don't believe, but if Eddie Jackson got 4, what's Al-Shaair for a headshot to a quarterback might be. I don't know. I could see it being something where that's like, whoa, we get a 4 or 6 gamer and then it gets down to 2 and a fine or 1 and a fine. But I think it's going to be a lot more because they're going to try to send a message because, this sounds horrible, but I'm going to say it anyways because I think it's the truth. If you're watching that and you play against Kansas City, against Buffalo, against these other teams, with Lamar or any of these guys, if it's not a suspension and it's just an ejection, again, I'm not saying they should do this. I'm just saying people will think this way.
Take liberties. What's
gonna make you say, hey, can I give up my middle linebacker? Could I get my backup middle linebacker in there and then maybe take a little bit of an extra shot at some of these guys? You have to kind of set a precedent because if you don't, if you're playing Kansas City and Mahomes goes to slide and you say, hey, this guy's just going to get it, nothing's really going to happen. Nobody's going to get ejected. Someone's going to take it too far. And that's just what happens. So I think, to me, at least a game was what I would at least advise, but I could see it being more and everyone going, oh my God, the outcry, football's soft now because they gave a guy 4 games suspension. Like, I don't know, man. Like, that's the rules are the rules.
Dirty ass play. How about Atlanta loses their 3rd straight? Kirk Cousins throws 4 interceptions, including a pick 6. He's now thrown 0 touchdowns and 6 picks in this 3-game losing streak. Over 100 attempts during that time. It's only been done one other time in history where you haven't thrown a touchdown pass in over 100 attempts and thrown 6 picks. Brett Favre in 2004. I mean, Brett Favre, obviously, storied career, but that's not a place you want to be. I guess my question for you here is Atlanta now 6-6. They're at Minnesota this weekend.
Yep.
Should they consider benching Kirk Cousins?
So, excuse me. I thought about this a bunch. Mike, I want to ask you this first before I answer this. The pick 6. Is that the worst throw you've ever seen?
He threw 4 picks yesterday. It could have been 6 or 7. Like, it's staggering to me. And we knew that, at the beginning of the year, we saw it. They no play action. He's thrown the least amount of pockets outside the tackle box this year. The next closest guy, I believe, is Tua, who started, and Tua missed a month. And like Cousins hasn't blown away. Like only, I think, 18 or 19 throws outside the tackle box this year. He can't move. It hasn't gotten any better. So when he plays on time and they're on schedule, he's smart. He gets the ball out quickly. He's accurate. Like we've seen all these things, and he had some really good moments, pushed him to 6-3. But now all of a sudden, it's like he looks worse to me. He insisted after the game that he's not, that he's fine. He feels good. Like there's nothing going on. But if you watch him play, man, he is like literally rooted into the ground. And all I can think of is Flores must absolutely be like going nuts thinking about what he could do to that offense and to Kirk Cousins with the kind of defensive pressure that he likes to bring. But yes, to your point, that interception was horrific.
So from the Tampa Bay game on Thursday Night Football, October 3rd through November 3rd. So they played 5 games in a month. Had roughly 1,300 yards, 12 of his 17 touchdowns, and only 2 picks. Just playing awesome football. I think that's what got them to 6-3, as you mentioned. It started before that, but they were 2-2 going in that game. Since then, 6 picks, 0 touchdowns. The yardage total outside of the New Orleans game is under 250 yards. The QBR hasn't been higher than 44. When in that stretch he had an 88 in there, or 76, or 70. He's obviously was never as talented as Rodgers and never moved as well. And we've beat up on Rodgers quite a bit this year. He's had the injuries with the hamstring and the knees and stuff. Rodgers stuff isn't the arm strength that's failing him. Kirk has no arm strength right now, and that's scary to me because he never was mobile. And yeah, that taking out of Rodgers' game has been a huge detriment to him. He's become much more of a 1 or 2 read quarterback, and Flores absolutely throttled him. I think what's the scariest part with Kirk is that he's not getting any push off, and it looks a lot more like the guy that we saw early in the year where you were like, oh my God, the Pittsburgh game, you're like, dude, he cannot throw the football. Yep. If you bench Kirk, you can't go back to him, in my opinion. These guys, you just can't do it, and they're in a bad spot where he's got the 2 guaranteed years. I don't have the numbers, in front of me, but it's not like after the year, if they cut him next year, they have to eat $65 million. If they don't, they have to eat another $70 million. I apologize. If they cut him next year, they have to eat $100 million. They're not going to do it. And it's not that Kirk's a bad guy. It's not that he can't play at all. But this team is quickly wiltering away. And I think Penix probably gives them a better chance right now. I struggle with. We'll talk about the Jets at the end. The Jets bench Rodgers. It doesn't really matter at this point. He's not going to be back next year. Kirk's got to be here, right? This is the Falcons are not eating $110 million in dead cap when they have a roster that's all these guys. They're not going to do it. So I think they got to wait a little bit longer. Maybe you give it another week, maybe 2 max, and just try to see, hey, can you get something? Because Mike, I worry they have a pretty soft 2 games after the Vikings, but you get nervous. Let's say they lose on Sunday, right? They lose at Minnesota. Pretty realistic. They could lose at Minnesota. They're 6-7. Everyone's panicking, but then they they go to Vegas and they got the Giants. So you'd feel like, hey, we're back to 8-7, but then is it too late to bench them? I don't know. It's a very hard decision. And honestly, I'm not jealous of Raheem Morris in this situation where you got an owner who went out and said, I'm not getting any younger. I'm going to go pay Kirk no matter what you guys want. You have a GM and a coach who drafted Michael Penix. And I don't know. I kind of wish Kirk played like this, a little earlier in the year. So it would have been an easier decision. The contract makes this a way harder decision than it probably is.
It's interesting because we debated that whole decision there, the draft pick, drafting him as early as they did, and their defense has been subpar. So I think it's actually one of the
surprising storylines of the year, honestly.
And that's where Raheem makes his bones, right? And you think when we were doing all those mocks and having all those conversations, they were almost unanimously linked to a pass rusher. Dallas Turner, Jared Verse, literally, you just go. You
couldn't get a mock draft without a trade back, Jared Verse or Dallas Turner. You couldn't find one.
And just let me ask you, and Verse is obviously probably going to end up being the defensive rookie of the year. Although, I think you and I kind of both agree, Quinion Mitchell should very much be in the conversation. But what sort of difference would that have made for that team and that defense? You end up going and trading a 3rd-round pick for Judon, which has not worked. You signed Justin Simmons. That hasn't really worked. Jesse Bates is awesome. That was a big plunge in free agency 2 years ago, but there's just not enough on that side of the ball.
Yeah.
Now you have your 1st-round pick just sitting over there. And to your point, could you imagine throwing him in, Michael Penix, who's barely, he barely played in the preseason. Let's not forget that, too.
Yeah,
they made a decision after the first preseason game. Oh, we're good. We don't need to see him anymore. And now he's mopped up a little bit here or there. He's not getting any real snaps. You're going to throw him into the middle of a playoff race in mid to late December and say, oh, yeah, kid, good luck.
Yeah. they're just in this weird spot. I don't. The Falcons. I think we all came into the year. We thought like by default, I think we thought they'd win the division because the
Yeah.
division,
And that
as it
division still
showed,
sucks.
it
Yeah.
still sucks.
Yes.
Tampa Bay is inconsistent. I think their coaches are very good, but Baker's and Cohen and these guys, and they have had a lot of injuries. They've been a tough team. Carolina's actually played much better of late than we expected, and
Credit for sure.
the Saints are some poop at the moment. Although they played hard under Rizzi the last 3 weeks. That's kind of what I think that people thought the Jets were going to do when they fired their coach, but obviously not the case. The Falcons are weird because, like, if you cut, Kirk's one big thing, right? And we can all agree like that's a big deal. But it's not just Kirk that's the problem. Grady Jarrett's, Jake Matthews, Bates, Onyemata, Lynch. Like these guys are not. They're either right at the end of their prime or probably on the other side, and they kind of felt like they were going all in to kind of catch lightning in a bottle here for 2 years, and then kind of rebrand around a young head coach in Penix. And Bijan doesn't touch the ball enough still for me. I don't get it. I'm not sure I'm ever going to understand it. Like people worry. I feel like some of these teams either don't worry at all about their guys' carry load, right? Like, with McVay did with Gurley, and it's like he's kind of out of the league in 6 years. But, him and Zeke, it was like, it was worth it. It was the 6 years. It was worth it. And they kind of ate the contract in the back end. It feels like then there's other teams where all they care about is, like, oh my God, we can't overwork this guy. And it's like the Falcons are kind of in that, like, we want to have Bijan here forever. And it's like, I don't know, man. Wouldn't you just rather get like 6 really good years out of him as opposed to like wasting cheap years because you're scared to have him touch the ball? Like, I don't know. And then the Judon thing, you made a great point there. The Patriots might have done well not paying Judon and getting a third for him. I think it worked. The way it unfolded was pretty embarrassing. But all in all, like, kind of doesn't look. He's kind of just existing. And I don't know. He's not going to get paid a lot this offseason. He probably should have taken the deal. Him and Hassan Reddick misjudged their markets quite handily.
Yeah, big time. I think it's too hard.
I want to see Tampa. I want to see Tampa win this division because I think Baker in the playoffs would be objectively the most fun to watch.
100%. Sign me up for that. Much rather see that than an immobile Kirk Cousins and that just craptastic defense. Like, and Tampa showed us last year. They can when they're playing good ball, when they're believing, when he's feeling it a little bit, they can play with anybody. Not necessarily beat anyone, but they can play with them. I don't think that Atlanta has that same vibe at all.
I'm shocked. Raheem. Are you shocked, by the way? Raheem is not. It doesn't feel like it's clicked yet. I don't. I'm a little surprised because I felt like he was so good in LA, and I just like. I'm not jumping to any conclusion. I'm just 10% worried. Like, is he just in an awesome DC?
I've lived that life covering the Patriots for 25 years and see these guys have success here and go somewhere else and can't. It doesn't. They either try to be too much like Bill or whatever it may be. They don't have success, and you see it all the time. It's like we're all looking at Ben Johnson, right? We mentioned him earlier. Like he's the guy, right? Everybody's anointed him as like he's the guy. He's going to get his pick of job. What job does he want? And like, you just automatically assume that Ben Johnson's going to slide into a head coaching job and that team is going to take off. Chicago, wherever it may be. No guarantee. We see it all the time, guys. Just doesn't necessarily translate. You can be a really good offensive coordinator, and maybe that's who you are. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good living. You can be an NFL offensive coordinator. There's only 32 of those jobs too. But it's, he might be starting to get into that area. Again, you said it's a little too early because this is his most recent crack at it. But, there's some head coaching experience there, and it never quite clicked for him. I have a question for you, and I was convinced this team was going to make the playoffs, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals, who lose again, wasting another 300-plus yard performance from Joe Burrow. They lose 44-38 to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh put up 44 freaking points, which is staggering, considering what I really feel about that offense. But God bless Russ. He's freaking flinging it. But Zach, now they're 0-7 this year against teams with a 500 or better record. And in those games, they're giving up 37 points per game. Their defense has obviously been a massive problem, actually, not just this year, but last year as well. But could he be? Zach Taylor, is he in trouble here?
He might be. I think there's a couple of things that, to me, it's going to see how it ends. They got to pay Jamar Chase, obviously, and figure out what they're going to do. T. Higgins.
Are you totally convinced they won't screw that up?
No.
I forget who said it, but it was like, just because they paid Joe Burrow doesn't mean they've changed their ways as an organization. Mike Brown has been notoriously cheap, fiscally responsible, however you want to, whatever you want to term it as, whatever side of the coin you're on.
Yeah.
But okay, I can understand them looking at T. Higgins and with some of the injury history saying, we're not going to pay you 4 years and $80 million last year. Like when that probably would have got it done.
No, I think, to me, the two things that worry me, I guess, from a Bengals perspective is I feel like they should have done what not that I'm not always right, but they should have done what I said at the deadline, and they should have gotten pieces for T. Higgins. They should have gotten pieces for some of these veteran guys that weren't going to probably be here long term. I think Zach Taylor's in trouble. My bigger reasoning I think he's in trouble is not necessarily the way it's unfolded here, because I think as good as Lou Anarumo is, this is a classic. This is what happened to the Eagles last year. Hey, you're a great DC, but we're going to fire you. I'm going to break, you fire the defensive coordinator. You address it in the draft and free agency and say, hey, we're going to be better next year and all that stuff. I guess I go to this. If you're Joe Burrow and the Bengals, are you looking at Buffalo and saying, hey, Joe Brady and Burrow obviously have a huge history together at LSU. He's going to be a hot commodity as an offensive coordinator. He's probably one of the 2 or 3 guys as OCs, him, Ben Johnson, Liam Cohen, that are really popping. Do you go, man, do we change it up, get a different voice in here? And is that different voice Joe Brady? Is that different voice promoting Dan Pitcher and bringing in a veteran DC to be like the assistant head coach? And I don't know what the answer is, but I do know, I think Zach Taylor would get another job quite quickly. And I think he's a lot better than people probably give him credit for.
I would agree.
It is like another year of, since that Super Bowl run, it's kind of felt like they almost got back. And then now it's like injuries and, hey, it's Burrow's wrist. And this year it's like, oh, it's the defense. You're kind of, if he doesn't get fired this year, he's on the number one hot seat going. He's kind of in that Sirianni mode. I feel like if this does not, he doesn't get fired, it's because this job is, as much as the Bengals are the Bengals in terms of like ownership and whatever, it would be an attractive job because of Joe Burrow. And I don't know. I don't think he gets fired, but if you told me he gets fired and they go hire Joe Brady, I wouldn't be shocked either.
It's they built a new indoor facility, which is something they haven't had. You have to walk across traffic. There's no joke. You had to walk across traffic to get to the practice facility. Just imagine grown men, highly paid grown men, although not as highly paid in some other cities, but highly paid, having to cross the street in their uniforms to go to the practice field. But it's the Burrow factor. Hey, give me that guy and I can figure it out. Like, I'll figure out the rest. Like this, if you give me a reasonable budget and you're not trying to save so much money, I feel like I can put together a good roster around him. I'm curious to see how, because they've been in a lot of these games, obviously not good enough, so you don't get points for trying, but he's had them playing hard. I'm curious if they continue to play hard here the final month of the season when it's pretty much over. I mean, 4-8. Mathematically, they're still alive, but I can't really. There's 9 million things that would have to happen for them to get in. But do they keep playing hard for him, or do some guys?
Yeah, that'll be a big factor as well. I mean, Jamar.
Yeah, does Jamar shut it down? Does T shut it down? Jamar says, I don't have a contract. T says, I'm about to hit free agency. Trey Hendrickson, who is an absolute baller, but he wanted a new deal and held out at the beginning of training camp and didn't get the deal and just showed up.
The one thing I want to say with the Bengals quickly, in just 2 seconds on this, Burrow's going to probably put up a season somewhere in the range of 4,500 yards, 42-ish touchdowns, 8 picks. It's crazy. If they had won any of these one-score games, he's walking away with the MVP, no question about it. And it is what it is, team sport. But it's crazy that when people look back and your kids are older, but whenever I have kids, looking at, hey, go and look at Joe Burrow's 2024 in Pro Football Reference. You're like, how did this guy not even be an All-Pro? And it's like,
right.
Well, his team choked away like 97 games.
Unbelievable. Couldn't stop a freaking nosebleed. Before we get to the game you were at yesterday, quickly, Bills bury the 49ers 35-10. 49ers, for the most part, didn't look like they wanted to be there. They got a little juice early from Christian McCaffrey, and then you and I were texting. McCaffrey surrenders himself during the course of a play.
Right.
I thought he popped his Achilles. I did not buy. They said it was a knee injury. I didn't buy it, but that's
Do you still buy it?
I mean, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Apparently, it's a PCL injury in his knee. He hit the knee hard after a long run during the game, and probably done for the year. 49ers are now 5-7. It's over, right? I mean, I know they're only 2 games out of the division lead, but they have the worst record in the division in terms of head-to-head, 1-3 in the division, 2 more division games left for them. But, I mean, you figure McCaffrey likely done for the year. Ayuk's done for the year. Bosa's been out for a couple of weeks with the hip and oblique, and quite frankly wasn't playing to the same level because he's been playing hurt all year. Hargrave, who they invested big money in, blew out the tricep early in the year. Fred Warner's been playing on a fractured ankle, which is you tweeted about it yet, like it's freaking bananas, like that he's still on and been on the field. And then of course you have the Purdy with the mysterious shoulder thing causing him to miss last week's game. Didn't look particularly sharp yesterday. It's over, right? It's this iteration of the 49ers, it would seem, have finally come and gone.
Not only is it over, I would have serious conversations with Kyle, John Lynch, and ownership. What are we doing? Are you in it for the long term? Because if you are, and I'm not, all the Kyle Shanahan conversations have been from media and from, it's not, no one reputable, or I shouldn't say reputable, no one that's a tier 1 insider has had any information that Kyle would not want to be there. Although you read body language and it's quite obvious. And again, I mentioned the Andy Reid. Not having a great time. Mentioned the Andy Reid Eagles thing. I think there is something to that. Kyle is very demanding. He's very much like Jim Harbaugh in the same way, where it's like max value, 100 miles an hour all the time, and sometimes that wears thin on guys. I would have a real conversation if Kyle's like, I'm in it for not just this year, but I'm in it for the next 3 to 4. I'm shutting Purdy. I'm shutting McCaffrey. I'm shutting Fred Warner. I'm shutting Nick Bosa. I'm probably shutting George Kittle, and I'm shutting everybody down that's going to be somewhat apart, or I'm going to need next year and probably for the next 2 to 3 years. I'm immediately after the season cutting Debo. I'm getting rid of some of these ulterior contracts. There's not a ton of them, but some of those, I'm like, hey, will someone take Javon Hargrave's money for a 4th round pick? Will somebody take they just paid Lenore, but whoever, just pick your choice of, because look, Kittle's 32, Trent Williams gonna be 38 years old. Fred's still an incredible player, but why run Fred into the ground if you don't have to?
Right.
Why run Nick Bosa in the ground? These are guys you have long-term investments in. So, sure, go run Debo out there. I mean, not to be a dick, but it's like they've been trying to trade him for
part of the long-term future.
They've been trying to trade him since before they paid him. So, I wouldn't let Purdy get any more hurt. He's had 2 arm injuries now in 3 years. At some point, you maybe say, hey, we're going to pay him. They don't really have a choice. Maybe we should conserve him. And next year you say, hey, we'll try to trade a couple of veterans off, make the team young again. And who knows, because they did this 4 years ago, if people remember, and they kind of turned the roster over from what they had back, or the 2019 into 2020 season. And they flipped the roster over and they went right back to the Super Bowl. They were right back being good again, right? They moved on from the Jimmy G kind of era and they moved into the Purdy era. Maybe they do the same thing and they're able to be competitive. And if Kyle doesn't want to be there, theoretically long term, it's we're really going to blow this thing up and go back to ground zero. I don't think they're going to do that. I'm just saying then it's like, hey, we're going full Madden. Who's taking all of these guys for max value and we're trading Kyle for all these picks? Again, I don't think that's going to happen. And there's nothing that's been reported that would indicate that's the case. But this era has been awesome. It's unfortunate they didn't make it. They didn't win. They didn't win it. But 2 titles, two Super Bowls, 2 NFC titles, another NFC title game, which they felt like they got probably robbed. It's been an awesome era for the last 5-6 years. It's over, and they're going to have to rebrand. And you covered it. In New England, there's always breaking point. Not that they were a dynasty, but they were an NFC dynasty, in my opinion, over the last 5 years, 6 years. This will be interesting how they handle this because John Lynch has had a interesting and successful ride as GM. Him and Kyle are kind of depends who who's GM, who's not, but he's never going to have had a harder job than they will have this offseason. And like, who are we? What are we going to be going forward? Who's going to be here? And how do we build around those guys? Because like you said, Mike, like 5-7, and it's not getting any easier. And these guys aren't getting healthy. In Buffalo, they're the best front-running team in the NFL, in my opinion. When they get up on you, they will just it's over. Josh looks awesome. They're having fun. Milano is back. Rousseau's playing well. They're well coached. I still need to see them in the playoffs.
It's not a great defense.
No, it's not.
If you tell me that they, as I was saying before about like
there
Philly,
was points to be had from San Francisco yesterday.
Yeah, if you tell me that Buffalo falls short of its ultimate goal of reaching a Super Bowl and winning a Super Bowl, what's going to happen?
Probably the defense.
It's going to. They're still really light in the middle. We've been talking about this since before the season started. You can run on them. You can move them around. Yes, Milano, if he's back, and the Milano that we know before he got hurt. And again, got hurt. Okay, but I'm not sure that you're going to see that guy necessarily this year. Secondary is still a little. You play a lot of zone. Like they've done a really, really good job of having moved on from all those guys. And everybody thought this was going to be a reset year. I was not one of those people that thought that was going to happen because I think Josh is Josh, and I think Sean runs a really good program. But they've been better than I thought. We'll see. We'll see if there's enough talent defensively for them to make a stand and make a run. Again, the AFC is not remotely comparable to the powers that's in the NFC.
Make sure Tyler Bass is making his kicks so he doesn't Daniel Carlson.
Yeah, exactly. We love to watch football games. We love to go to football games. You're always at football games. I'm always at football games. But we go to other games as well. And if you're looking for tickets and you're looking for how do I get there? How do I do this thing? Well, Game Time is the best app going. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets, resetting, changing the parameters. No, Game Time's got it. They have a 110% money back guarantee. So if you find tickets better somewhere else, they take care of you. CLNS got a great offer. Always do. CLNS, of course, I've got to find the offer. It's right in front of me. There it is. Hey, Giardi. It's been a long 24 hours. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create that account. Redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. And now we end the program with this. And you don't even have to talk about the game specifically if you don't want to. The Jets, who were in control yesterday, 21-7, have the ball at the 9-yard line. Aaron Rodgers has an open Garrett Wilson in the end zone, and he misses him. Was it the wind? It might have been the wind. I should have thrown it flatter, he said. But, I played in the wind before. It seems a little bit of an excuse. It's not a little bit of an excuse. Very next play, Leonard Williams, 92 yards?
92 yards, yes.
Longest pick six by a defensive lineman in NFL history. And all of a sudden, it's an entirely different game. Should have been 28-7. Instead, it's 21-13. And the Jets, as you have talked about a million times this year, the moment they faced adversity, I think there's been one game where they faced adversity and they actually fought through it. They face adversity in this game and they completely fall apart.
Yeah, so just quickly on the game, Seattle Seattle's a good team. I think they will continue to progress under Mike McDonald. Um, they do a lot of really dumb things. I mean, special teams was an abomination. They
Yep.
fumbled. They almost fumbled 3 punt returns or kickoffs. They had, kicks blocked. They went for it on their own 38-yard line over. Like they went for it pretty much every fourth down. It was kind of like a little Staley-ish, where it was like, I know your punter's hurt, dude, but like, geez,
What are you doing? Yeah.
what are you doing? They got bailed out, right, on some of these, but that was interesting. Geno still throws a pretty deep ball. JSN and Metcalf make enough plays for them. Lockett kind of feels a little bit like he's really the third guy now. It used to be like he was, I don't know. I mean, it's just one game, but he doesn't do much. They don't really use Kenneth Walker at all. I feel like it's like they just throw the ball every time. It's crazy. The defense is good. They fly around. They're not great by any means, the defense, but they're good enough. They didn't do a lot of complicated stuff yesterday. Felt like they were just hitting a lot of too high. They set some cover 3 invert stuff. It was, they did what they did. But the one thing that you talked about, that play, we've seen that play before. Aaron Rodgers has seen that play before. The Vikings and Brian Flores did it to him for a pick 6 against Minnesota, which was the game changer in that game. The Jets had just gotten a turnover. Rodgers throws the pick 6, and the rest is history. Rodgers comes out yesterday, finally looks healthy. I mean, he is moving around. Like, I mean, he underthrows a deep ball in the beginning of the game, but he should have thrown the ball over the middle. But whatever, it was clearly like, we're going to disprove I can throw the ball deep still, and he looked pretty good. I felt like the first, 15 to 20 minutes moving around. He threw a lead block. They're getting creative. They're at 14-0. He's, he had one play where it was an incompletion, but he ran around for like legitimately 15 seconds. It was like, whoa, what's going on? And then leading a good drive. They get down to the 8-yard line, as you mentioned. Garrett Wilson runs a, stutter and go of sorts, a slant and go, whatever term you want to use. And he's open for by a mile. And Rodgers misses him. And it was like the ball kept sailing. And he should have thrown it flatter. And it was windy yesterday, but whatever. Like, Rodgers makes that throw in his sleep. And you're like, you couldn't believe he missed it. He comes back, and the Jets, not only do they run the blitz I mentioned, one guy comes off the left side, and Leonard Williams, the D tackle, drops into the hole there. The Vikings did it with Van Ginkel as the linebacker, but it's the same play. Tyler Conklin was uncovered in the end zone. Rodgers didn't have to throw the ball. He rushed it because he didn't want to get hit. After that play, and shame on the Jets, not a single person except an offensive lineman chased after Leonard Williams, and that's a topic for another day. Rodgers, after that moment, was pretty much the Rodgers we've seen most of the year, which is like dumping it shorter. He threw some deep balls, but getting frustrated in the whole thing. 0-5 with the ball in his hands, under 2 minutes to go try to win the football game now. And bad loss for the Jets, obviously. But, they're 3-9 at this point. It's just like another game where you felt like this roster is really good, and if they had a coach, and I guess if they had a quarterback would play 4 quarters consistently, like they'd be a pretty damn good team. The bigger conversation is it feels like it's pretty close to zero that Rodgers is back next year. We debated back and forth. It feels like there'll be a new head coach, a new GM, and a new quarterback with the Jets. Rodgers is starting this week. Breece Hall played through a lot more serious of an injury, I think, than people realize. I don't really actually know why he played, but he looked good. He had the 2 fumbles, but he did look good moving, which, considering what's going on there, I was kind of shocked. The Jets were down to their backup safeties playing corner yesterday at one point because DJ Reed, Michael Carter, and Sauce all were hurt. Sauce Gardner was finally awesome yesterday. Looked like the all-pro we'd seen the last 2 years. But the bigger picture, the Jets are kind of due for a competitive rebuild, I would say. This roster, I think, is going to be really good going forward, but they're going to need consistent quarterback play. They're going to need a head coach, and they're going to need someone to kind of kick them in the ass a little bit. I guess I'll wrap that on the Jets. But, yeah, the Seattle is a team that kept pace. They're a first-place team now. But, yeah, the Jets are they're just meandering along and towards the top 5 to 8 pick, which is crazy to talk about.
It's Patriots 3-10, Jets are 3-10. Obviously, the Patriots feel like with the quarterback, their trajectory is a little different than but then obviously the roster with New York is significantly better. But it's interesting that I think if you go back and you listen to our pods from week 1 through here, week 13, talking about a lot of the same things. It's just a repeating of errors, repeating of themes. It's just like that. This, I feel like I've done the same story on the Patriots for I don't even know how many weeks. It's just like, again, like I look at the Patriots and say, like, you could have won that game yesterday. No one would have. I wouldn't have bet them or anything like that because it's crazy. They've won 3 games all year, but like they're competitive, they're in it, and then they do dumb things, and they miss a 25-yard field goal. They can't score in the red zone. They, whatever the 4th down conversions. And with the Jets, it's been more like Rodgers. His aura is so big, and there was so much put on him, understandably so, for what you gave up for him and what he had been in his past and what obviously the Jets had lived through with, especially the Zach Wilson stuff. It's like, okay, my man, if he's just like, he doesn't even have to be great. He just has to be slightly good. Like, you know what I mean? Like competent.
Yeah.
Like you hadn't got competent quarterback play. Had you gotten competent quarterback play from Zach in either of the 2 years prior, the Jets are a playoff team, and you get Aaron and you have the same record, the worse record than what you would have with Zach. It just, there's a lot of people that tell you they saw it coming because of who Aaron is and sort of how he wants to operate and how he just sort of takes control of things and doesn't take a lot of the responsibility on himself. But even then, I still say it was worth the roll of the move at the time. It just couldn't have gone. It pretty much couldn't have gone any worse.
Yeah, I think a lot of it died last year on September 11th and on play 4, and Rodgers had to fight so hard to get back. And credit to him. I mean, I don't know what happened. He might play 17 games at age 41 off a torn Achilles. I mean, that's extremely impressive, no matter what you think of the guy. But the Jets people thought, and I think all of us were, there's a top 5 defense, top 5 specials. Really good skill group, good offensive line. If the coach and the quarterback can even be competent, and the quarterback, you have no idea what you're getting drive by drive. I mean, look, I said this a million times. Like Rodgers, you just truly, I think what's tough, and I guess this is what happens when you age. Drive by drive, you just don't know what you're getting. There's no consistency. Like one drive, he'll look like Aaron Rodgers, and the next drive, he looks like Tim Boyle. Like it's like you don't know what you're getting. Mike, I wanted to quickly get your thoughts on this. We don't talk a lot of Giants. I'm just going to get your blind reaction here. Kayvon Thibodeau says the NFL as a locker room should operate as a meritocracy when asked about when players should speak up. If you make plays, you have a voice. If you don't make plays, you shouldn't have a voice. What are we doing?
Part of what they signed up for with Kayvon Thibodeau when they drafted him was he's a little bit of a unique personality, right?
Has Kayvon Thibodeau made a play all year?
Last year he had 11 sacks.
Been hurt. He was hurt for a majority of the season.
Yeah, he had 11 sacks last year, and I think 6 came in 2 games. He has not been worth. He's not been worth it.
He has 2 sacks this year, and he has 3 total tackles since October 6th. He's only played in 2 games, but.
So in that statement that he made, is he arguing that he?
Oh, he is a I make plays guy for sure.
Should somebody in the media raise their hand and say, "Hey, you have 3 tackles since October the 2nd, so I think you should probably go over there and let somebody else come over and talk." Burns can come over and talk. Dexter Lawrence with his dislocated elbow, he can talk all he wants. You go over there.
I actually can't believe that was he has last year he was good, right? Like all things considered, again, a little stat compiling ish, but 11.5 sacks last year for sure, 3 forced fumbles. The other 2 years, he has 6 sacks combined, and you're a top 5 pick. The Giants have a real problem, and I guess we can just finish with this quickly. We didn't really talk about them much. I still think there's no way Daboll is retained. And I think, whether you're the Jets or the Saints or any of these other teams as an offensive coordinator or whatever, and even the Patriots, I don't know. Maybe you say, hey, maybe we bring Brian Dable in with Drake Maye and like what he did with Josh Allen and even Daniel Jones at points. He could be a good fit there. Sure. I don't know whether Joe Shane survives because I think maybe they'll convince him, hey, he never got to pick the quarterback. And if they bring in a Belichick, like he'll work collaboratively with Bill and Bill will get to bring Josh and Patricia and his kids and all that. The Giants have kind of like they have no control of the locker room. And I don't know how you get back from that. So they're going to probably pick first overall and they're probably going to pick between Cam Ward and Shador. But man, that situation feels ugly. And it's going to get uglier quicker than I expected.
We'll get much deeper into the draft conversation when we get to the offseason. I wouldn't take either one of those players you just mentioned.
Probably you take Travis Hunter and say, hey, we'll just take the best player on the board and go from there.
I mean, we'll get into the quarterbacks because I have strong opinions on the quarterbacks.
Pay Sam and run out Travis Hunter and Malik Neighbors and say, hey, I don't know. That's probably a lot better.
Sam back in New York. If New York has Belichick as the head coach, that doesn't feel like a red marriage.
Then Bill can't break his brain.
That's true. I'll show you how you saw the ghosts and how we can prevent that from happening going forward. All right, that's going to put a wrap on the All 32 pod for a Monday. It was a long one, but we had a lot to get to. Thank you for watching, listening, subscribing, leave reviews. We appreciate it very much. And we will see you at the end of the week as we get ready for, holy crap, week 14. See you.